Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar today. We'll get started in just about a minute. If you're just joining for the webinar, thank you for joining us, and we will get started in just a few moments. Okay, thanks everyone for joining the webinar today. How to equip your marketing team for success with Gatsby and Contentful. We are really excited to have a wonderful group of presenters and panelists joining us today. A couple of announcements. First off, everyone will be on mute during the webinar, but we will leave time for Q&A during the presentations as well as the end of the presentation. So just use the question chat window to put your questions there, and we have panelists waiting to help answer those, as well as by the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be available on our website a little bit later today. So if you miss any of the webinar or you can't hear at a certain point, you can always catch the recording later. We also have a link to the closed captioning for the webinar, which will be in the chat window. So if you would like live closed captioning during the webinar, you can follow that link. And with that, I'm going to introduce our presenters today. So Adam Garone is co-founder and led the Movember Foundation from its humble beginnings in Australia to become a global phenomenon. Adam is now the CEO of Starlight Children's Foundation, where he is leading the organization through a transition to build the brand and grow revenue in order to deliver more happiness to seriously ill children. And we'll hear more about Starlight Children's Foundation in a few moments. Lisa Potter is a Senior Vice President of Digital and Grassroots Engagement. And she leads the digital and individual fundraising at Starlight through innovative campaigns across Starlight's digital channels. She has nearly 15 years of experience in the nonprofit marketing and development space, with prior executive roles at Gary Cincy Foundation and Movember. And we're also joined by Brian Webster and Jordan Jennings of Delicious Simplicity. They're both co-founders. Brian oversees development and strategy, and Jordan heads up design and creative. And Delicious Simplicity has been a passionate Gatsby evangelist since 2018. So really looking forward to hearing from all of our speakers today. We're going to start with one question, just to learn more about who's joining us. Let's make sure the question is launched. Okay, first question is, what is your current role? So we'd just like to know, are you a developer, marketer, content creator, designer? If other, you can always put that other in the chat window. So go ahead and cast your vote here. Oh, great. I see we have about 75% voted already. So I'll just give you another few seconds, then I'll close the poll and share the results. Great. All right. Okay, so a lot of developers and then marketers next and some designers as well. And I'll look through the chat window to see what other roles that we have. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today. And with that, I'm going to pass the controls over to our first presenter, Brian Webster with Delicious Simplicity. And you should have the controls now, Brian.
I do, and I just began my screen share. If you can hear me and see me,
Yep.
we'll go on. Great. All right, so yeah, we're here talking about how to equip your marketing team for success with Gatsby and Contentful. Run through a little menu, if you will, of what we'll do today. Do a little quick intro as to who we are, talk a little bit about the tech stack and particularly Gatsby. And then I want to introduce Starlight, let them speak a little bit about their goals and challenges, get into the details of our solution, and then for the devs on, we'll dive into a couple code examples and even do a little demo of Contentful and the workflow that they have for building their pages and maintaining their site, and then close with some of the results and leave some time for Q&A. So we are Delicious Simplicity, and despite the fact that I just referred to the outline for the presentation as a menu, we're not a catering company. We are a small and nimble design and dev agency. We primarily serve nonprofits like we'll look at today with Starlight. We also do a lot of work in news publishing and video media sort of broadcasting sites. But above all, we try to make our projects fun. It should be you're building a new website, and just try to keep it an easy hang. Truism number one, the web is changing. And we look at that from the standpoint of, buzzwords like decoupled and headless and API first and microservices and static sites and all these things. They're no longer buzzwords anymore. These are proven approaches. It's been the primary way we've been building for quite a while. We did come from the full stack space, a lot of WordPress and Drupal sites. And, we saw that first as a big move towards this decoupled architecture and really empowering your front end and your back end developers. And I think when this first kind of started coming about, for us, certainly working in Drupal a lot, this idea of headless or decoupled Drupal, it came with a lot of exciting promises. But in the early days, it was kind of difficult to do, and you lost a lot when you decoupled that you needed to kind of find ways to do, by hand or through some other services. But in response to this sort of paradigm shift, we've just seen this explosion of really exciting microservices. I mean, you got things like, Netlify that are, pretty much continuous integration and hosting at scale, and a whole bunch of other amazing functions out of the box. You got Auth0 that is just, providing great authentication. This is a great service we worked with recently, Mux. It's kind of almost like the Stripe of video for video ingestion, transcoding, live streaming, amazing APIs. You got GraphQL services like Hasura for building great APIs, Algolia for search, Contentful, all the headless CMSs, ImageX for image transforms, BigCommerce just did a really exciting thing up in the Jamstack conf of like fully headless checkout, headless commerce. We got Stripe and new upcoming services like OneGraph that are kind of stitching all these pieces together for us. It's a really exciting time. And then you combine that with these breakthroughs we've seen in speed and performance from like progressive rendering and code splitting and cool caching and service workers, and the notion of pre-built markup, which that's the one I just want to spend a second on. So if we think of our websites, kind of a metaphor we use in-house, if we think of our website sort of as a big event or a big party, and everyone coming to visit it are our guests, sort of not pre-building, not having a build phase and kind of assembling web pages on the fly at request time would kind of be like the equivalent of setting up your party like when your guests show up, which is, why are we doing that on their time? There's this notion of, hey, why wasn't this done before I got here? So I think as site builders, as site owners, it's becoming more and more our responsibility to say, hey, how much of this stuff can we get done before our guests show up, especially when we know what they're going to come and look at. And in many cases, and an area Gatsby really thrives is sometimes that can be the entire website, and everything is literally done to a T and pre-built before they arrive, which means if we're expecting 10 people at our party or 10,000 people show up, we're really equipped well to scale. And this notion of scale as it pertains to kind of, medium-sized sites like a Starlight, I think is really interesting, because you might think, day over day, they don't have a ton of traffic. There's not this high need for scale. But they're a nonprofit, it spikes. We're coming into the end of the year, huge time for donations. And then, there's spikes that you can plan for, and there's spikes that just kind of happen that you respond to. We never want our best day to be our worst day. And that doesn't mean that your site goes down for it to be your worst day. It could just start to become very slow because there's a lot of users on it. Servers are slowing down. With this infrastructure, we don't really have running servers as much. Everything's pre-built. Scale is cheap, easy. And I think that's just really great for your best day to be your best day and to get as many of those donations as you can. all of these concepts I feel like really combine in a beautiful and simple way in Gatsby, and we absolutely love working in it. So yeah, it's awesome. However, I know for people that are not working in it yet, or if you have your agency, you have an internal team, and you kind of have your established workflows and ways that can get done, switching to something like this can be a bit of a leap of faith. But we've been pretty much primarily working this way now for about 2 years. A lot of work in Gatsby specifically in that time, and having done that, I'm just want to go on record and say, the ROI is absolutely worth it. There's far more reasons than I can list on one card, but the separation of concerns, like we just looked at with the decoupling and how that empowers the front end and back end developers, the performance and security. And I think this is an area where there's a lot of really hidden ROI, which is this cost savings in time to market, how easy it is to, sort of refactor or change a design. Once your APIs are kind of in place, to drastically change one section from, one design to the other, you're pretty much just bringing in front end, developers, very nimble, maintenance costs go down, speed of changing, iterating goes down. And this one is my favorite, probably the last, which is the targeted use of a budget to mission critical features. I feel like with previous tech, there's a lot of time spent in kind of wrestling CMSs, reinventing, wheels at various points. But with this architecture, being able to leverage the microservices and not having to spend all this money to acquire speed, but have speed kind of be baked in out of the box, that allows us, with the first dollar that we invest, to really be solving the client's particular problems and put more money into design, put more money into building something that's really specific to their use case. And that's so critical to a nonprofit specifically. And with that, I want to transition over to truism 2, which is that great projects really do start with great clients. And we're very fortunate to be able to work with Starlight on that. So I'd like to introduce Adam Garone, the CEO of Starlight, to just talk a little bit about them, their organization, and some of their needs in approaching a new website redesign.
Thanks for that. Yeah, so if there's any background noise, I'm just at an airport lounge at the moment. Yeah, so my name is Adam Garone. I first got into the social enterprise sector back in 2004 when I was one of the co-founders of the Movember Foundation. And through that journey, I was the CEO for 13 years, led the digital development. And that website, Movember.com, has gone on to raise over $1 billion. Globally. And at the start of this year, I joined Starlight as the CEO, which has an amazing cause, seriously ill kids, amazing programs, but it's largely unknown. And the digital presence actually reminded me of Movember's back in 2004. So one of the first things we initiated was a project to totally reimagine and reinvent our digital presence, which becomes the heart of how we tell our stories, how we engage the community, and most importantly, how we raise funds so that we can have a great impact on seriously ill kids. So really excited to have worked with Delicious Simplicity. And that was all through Lisa Potter, who I worked with for over 10 years at Movember, and I coached to come across to Starlight to lead this initiative. So I'll hand over to Lisa now just to talk a little bit about herself and this project.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, great lead-in. Thank you. And as you'll see, it's very fitting to kick off talking about Starlight, featuring a Starlight kid. The little dancer you see on the screen is Seema J, and he is one of our Starlight kids wearing our gowns. For over 35 years, the Starlight Children's Foundation has worked really hard to advance our mission, similarly to what Adam was just speaking to, of delivering happiness to seriously ill children. We provide our programs to kids in over 800 hospitals across the U.S., including the hospital gowns that you just saw, video gaming consoles designed specifically for use in hospitals, and virtual reality sets equipped with curated content for hospitalized kids. So essentially this. To date, our programs have reached over 16 million kids and their families, but A child is diagnosed with a life-threatening condition every 30 seconds, so we still have a long way to go to ensure every hospitalized child has access to Starlight programs. So, with this long history in the gaming space, we really wanted Starlight's brand and assets to reflect this innovative tech-driven approach in our programs. So, our old site really lacked a clear user journey. It was a bit stale, but we need our website to be our hub. It has a huge job to do. It's the center of our digital presence. It's the single most important asset to our storytelling and our fundraising and achieving our mission. So we wanted to overhaul our brand and the website to get it up to speed and help us better serve this mission. But being a charity, every dollar spent is a donor dollar. So it was really critical that this project come in on time and on budget, stretching every dollar to maximum capacity. So working with Delicious Simplicity and these technologies, it really helped us accomplish our goals with this project. So moving into why we needed to reinvent the site. Our old site was holding us back. It was not really set up to guide potential supporters through a journey or drive them to take a specific action. It didn't really offer multiple ways to support the foundation, and it didn't allow us to gather insights and data, and it was not tied to our CRM or backend. It was clunky, slow load time. Much of the content on the initial site had to be changed by a third party. So a lot of time and effort went into sometimes changing something really simple. And then lastly, but most importantly, as a charity, like many businesses, storytelling is at the heart of what we do. And the old site did not allow us to focus on the most important people, the seriously ill kids we support, and the impact of our programs serving them. So we love this quote. Even though we are a charity, it doesn't mean that we get a pass on having a bad web experience. So for the key requirements, our new site had to be fully mobile first. With over 50% of our community on their phones, we started there. A lot of sites say that they're mobile first, but we really needed it to start there. We also needed a website that was lightning fast. If someone is on our site and they're interested in supporting Starlight, we want to convert them through that support funnel as quickly as possible. So it was critical that the pages and the content load immediately with no hiccups or lag time. Ultimately, we really needed to update the design and ensure it was modern and clean and resonated with our audience. We wanted a vibrant look that appeals to both donors and fundraisers, but also corporate professionals, our hospital partners, people in the tech space, and that work with our different campaigns. And also to the most important people of parents, as well as our pediatric community. We wanted photos and videos of the Starlight kids and families to take the center stage for the new design, along with our storytelling. We also wanted it to be data-driven and insight-led. The new site needed to clearly delineate journeys for donors and fundraisers and really drive them to take action. In this day and age, people don't have time to read a ton of copy in order to take action. You really have to lead them there. And so we needed the website to do that. And then ultimately, storytelling is now at the heart of the site. We needed to create beautiful content centered around stories, not templates. But most importantly, our digital team needed a tool to create this in-house. So essentially, we became affectionately referred to as our content marketing paradise. It's been a real adventure working with the Delicious Simplicity team, Gatsby and Contentful, to make this happen. It's been a real game changer for our organization. But with that, Brian, I'll turn it back over to you to talk about exactly how you solved these issues for us.
Great. Thanks a lot, Lisa. Appreciate that. And yeah, when we first sat down and talked with Starlight, we personally really resonated with almost all those pain points, either experiencing them directly ourselves or having heard them from other clients and nonprofits. And, that combined with, being equipped with tools like Gatsby and Contentful and just, really sort of our finger on the pulse of this transition, we felt really good about being able to bring a solution that could make a big difference for them and speak specifically to those pain points and solve those goals. That solution really began in design. So I'm actually going to let Jordan run us through sort of how we started thinking about that and how we approach this different way of sort of laying out content.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Brian. Really, one of the first questions we ask ourselves when we're scoping a project is this more of an application or is it marketing? So although they're functionally really simple, marketing sites are actually pretty time consuming to design. We wind up making a ton of comps because each page needs to be visually different, it's got to be polished, and it's always got to make a great impression. And trying to cram content into a one-size-fits-all template is practically impossible. In solving this, many times the first approach is to pick a few really important pages and invest a lot of the design time making those mission critical pages look terrific. The downside, of course, is that those pages are just not easily editable by the client. And second, then you're designing the rest of the site to be accomplished with a subpage template, and that is always a repetitive look and feel. And we're forcing the client to shoehorn all their content into a layout. And the WYSIWYG body field editor has only produced the most heinous of design crimes. So we much prefer to take a modular approach. This involves shifting our thinking to consider each piece of content as its own compartmentalized little story component block. We start by identifying the essential content blocks, and we've been in nonprofits for quite a while, so many of these were super obvious. Hero, statistics, images, quotes, videos, bulletins, email collects, obviously a donate block. And then in the design phase, we carefully consider the look and feel to make sure each of these modules will interact with one another seamlessly when they're sequenced. That way, when you assemble this page, you can arrange and rearrange content in whatever order that the narrative demands. So just like that, voila, that's the hospital wear program page. That's a quick overview of the design. Of course, there's so much depth of development that goes behind making this actually function. So back to Brian to walk you through how that was constructed and the workflow for the internal Starlight crew.
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, so obviously this notion, when we first ran it by Starlight, it was like, yes, this this is much better. How do we get that? And this notion around sort of content modeling and development, modular approach, sort of block-based layout to page. I mean, that's certainly been around. Like I said, we used to work in Drupal a lot, and there are a couple of common modules and solutions that you saw there for doing that. The paragraphs module was a common one, or working in panels. And I don't want to dwell too much on the pain points of this. I mean, there certainly were those. But let's rather talk about what actually was done really well in this environment, and that mainly came from the fact that this was a full stack environment. So there was this sort of build a layout UX inside of Drupal, and Drupal also was in charge of how that presented itself. So it was pretty easy to build a page and kind of see how that looked. Obviously, in a decoupled architecture, there's some challenges that present themselves of how exactly do we do that. And that's one of the areas where working with headless CMS like Contentful really came into play. And we just truly love the APIs and the flexibility that we gain from there. So they get the Wahoo party emojis that Gatsby gets as well. And we'll see how well they work together in a second. So right off the bat, the UX of Contentful is a delight, certainly compared to other CMSs. Coming in and setting up your content types and models and adding the fields is just really clean and easy. So we basically go down that process and kind of stemming off the blocks Jordan just talked about, bulletin board copy, donation, email collection, hero, kind of put these together in Contentful. And you can see an example of the hero one on the right. We've got our title, our headline, our copy, and our different call to actions. And then connecting these and getting the data out of Contentful to work with is made super easy with the Gatsby Contentful source plugin, and that feeds gets data from Contentful's delivery API, and then that puts it into a local GraphQL store, which now as developers we get to work with the elegant syntax of GraphQL. We get all the great fragments and ability to organize our code. So here's an example, just picking up on that hero one, how we could easily pull the data out of there from the headline, the copy, the image. On this line here, we can see a really cool thing that Gatsby provides. The Gatsby image plugin allows to talk to Contentful's image API, and we can basically just resize and set the quality of our different image sizings. It really takes a lot of the pain out of images being one of the things that slows down your site, gets you the optimized sizes for mobile and desktop, pretty much with no additional coding required. And you can see we just basically repeat this pattern for all of the different blocks, spreading the different fields for the blocks in there. And then we can organize all the blocks really cleanly in our components folder in a block library. And you can see if we look in some of these, there's not just the blocks themselves. Like, so bulletin board has stacked small. Under images, there's a scrollable group of images. There's an image slideshow. So many of these blocks have different sort of layout options as well, really giving them a lot of flexibility. So once this is in place, then it's pretty much just two more really lightweight components to make it super reusable. We just import the entire block library into a single sort of block wrapper, key in off the block type, render it, and then literally to sort of bring this modular layout to any page. This is the actual landing page template here on the right. It's that simple to just import our blocks component here, and then we just pass the data from that Contentful blocks field. We can use that fragment, and any new template, any new route that we wanted to sort of let use this modular layout, if it was the body of a blog or really any other page, it's really just a couple lines of code to attach that functionality to it. So that gets us the page, and that's how we solved it from a development side. But now the question is, what does that look like day to day for the marketing team? So like I said, Contentful's got a really great UX, and it's really clean. And I think if you work for Starlight and you know the blocks by name, you probably have a pretty decent idea as to what this page looks like. Block hero, donate, copy, statistics, bulletin board, some good naming conventions in the titles, but that's not quite good enough. We need a way for page builders to see the page as it comes to life. But now headless CMS is what Contentful is, so it doesn't really know what your page looks like, and it doesn't, it's not really concerned with that because it accepts that there's many outlets for this data, but it does have the notion of, hey, do you need a preview environment to kind of maybe see your changes? And Contentful kind of, carried the baton part of the way, and then Gatsby Preview sort of picks it up. And Contentful has a preview API that specifically will give you your drafted changes, your unpublished work, and Gatsby Preview is a really great product that kind of you get when you launch Gatsby on Gatsby Cloud, which just released today. And what that does is, without having to really maintain a separate code base, not having to build a preview one, you get to use the same code base you're working with when you build your main production Gatsby site, and you just run it up at Gatsby Cloud, and it basically runs a dev server the same way you would on your local environment that's in sync and gets all of those drafted changes from Contentful, and it gets them in real time, and we'll look at an example of that in a second. And then those combined now give editors and writers the full picture, where they have this editor interface on the left, and then they can see the entire page come together, or they can see their changes. And what's also great about it is it's not a one-page preview. I mean, the older sites, we were able to sort of preview the page we were working on, but this is a full site preview. So you could change the home page, change the navigation links, change a bunch of subpages, write a new blog, and you can send the link around. Starlight team can QA it and say, yeah, okay, this looks great. Let's publish all these changes and go live. So hopefully the screenshots helped a little bit, but I think we would maybe want to actually jump in and see it in action. So we got a demo to do exactly that. I got Contentful up here on the left, and then I got the Starlight homepage up on the right. So I'm going to just scroll down it and if you look at the blocks on the left and then what's on the right, it lines up. I'm going to jump into this impact statistics block, which you can see rendered on the right side. We've got these 4 stats about the amount of money that and its impact, and just various other metrics over there. And then you can see that those correspond with the statistics on the left here. And if we were to, let's say, move this 800 hospitals to the top, 1, 2, 3, the Gatsby preview environment refreshes. One thing really cool to point out about that is the scroll position on the preview site didn't change. We're about halfway down the page. It stayed there. It automatically reloaded. This is great when you're building a really long like mega page and maybe the part you're working on is towards the footer. It'd be particularly obnoxious if you're having to change your content, refresh, scroll down. This is really cool if you have a mobile device or an iPad and you're kind of working on that experience. You can literally have the iPhone up on your desk and watch the preview environment refresh, and you don't even need to interact with the phone. So I'll make a couple of changes here. So we made this cool icon library for them, and Contentful has a great extension UX, so we were able to integrate that pretty easily. We'll change this little briefcase here to a little shot, and you can see that update on the right-hand side there. And then these blocks can also, like I said, all be easily rearranged up and down the page. So we'll just move statistics up a level. We can see that change and the power of how we're sort of able to change our pages here. I'm going to navigate to a subpage, and then I'm going to go into Contentful to our navigation content model. So it's one thing to be able to make these really cool pages, but we need a way to get people there. So these landing pages need to be linked up. Pretty simple navigation content model in Contentful with a few items in there. We have a drop down and a link content model. You can see how that corresponds to the nav on the right. I'll just rearrange it real quick, put the impact as the lead one. You can see that that changed. And then I'll do the same to some of the sub-menu links under fundraise here. I'll just rearrange one of those and put stream for Starlight to the top. And we can see no reload. It even preserves the drop-down menu. We see that change come into effect. Let's look at a couple more examples. So this media room page is a really great looking page. This page Starlight built top to bottom in-house. That was really encouraging to see that they could create a page with what we built, and it looks awesome. There's another one. This is their deliveries program page, and we'll look at a cool example down here in just a second. So at the bottom, this is one of the we call the bulletin board blocks. The want additional information about this program. And like I said, in addition to the blocks, they have these notions of sort of different visual styles or different layouts. So if we go into this one and we change the visual style from default to stacked, we can see we get a nice new layout over there. The image sizing all recrops, it looks great. And there's a stacked small, which we can switch to. And that's really good when they have a lot of items. So a lot of flexibility. Pretty much, all the blocks that we built have, a variant, if you will, or two of how they lay out. One last example I think is really cool to look at. I'm going to go to their About page, jump to this Our Values section, and then we pull this up in Contentful. Okay, so one thing that's great about these blocks in Contentful is they're all their own piece of content. So they're all versioned. There's a full revision history. Contentful has some really kind of cool features for collaborating. So if a couple people were working on this, there's like a comment sidebar. You could say, hey, maybe should we be adding a 7th value, or should we switch the order, or what do you think about rearranging the text here? And any place that this values block is placed around the website, on another landing page, let's say a 7th value was added or a type change was made, because it's being referenced by all the other landing pages, you change it once and it sort of updates throughout the site. Really cool way to see this is, let's make a new page as an example. Let's pretend we're making the landing page to appeal to some gamers. So starting totally from scratch, we'll grab that copy that we were just looking at, and I'm going to go hit open site on Gatsby preview. And here, we're already starting with the page. This is the start of our donor appeal example page on the right. We've got our values block reused. Already looks like a pretty decent page. It could just be / our values, but let's take it a little further, and let's add some more content to this, maybe some donate blocks. So go and choose the ones that we saw on the home page. We'll grab those 3 up CTAs and place those, and scroll down and see that those are on the page. And then maybe we'll add a video specifically for our gamers. We'll add that in, and let's bring that to the top of the page here. Great. And we need some kind of cool like leader, so we'll create a new hero block, and let's call it donor example page. Welcome gamers. And we'll switch back, and we'll bring that to the top as well. And hey, we're getting pretty close, but maybe we want to add some call to actions. Put a donate in the top, and then maybe join the mailing list. Can do that, and that looks pretty cool. But maybe we want to instead do donate once, donate monthly. So we'll change the first one to donate once, and then go donate monthly, and that looks pretty cool. But you know, donate monthly is a little, you know, underemphasized compared to donate once. Maybe we want both those buttons to look equal. So this notion of call to action prominence will change from default to equal. Now we get a good, you know, 2-up, donate once, donate monthly. And all this stuff, the prominence, the different block layouts, this is the same pattern at play. This is contentful content models, fields feeding into Gatsby, powering React components, connected to Gatsby preview. And, you know, really you're limited just by your imagination of what you can do with a combination of those things. So yeah, in about a minute, we got this page together. Again, this video, if we decided to change the thumbnail or update this video, it would update in every page that video is linked. And once this kind of came together, we saw that the Starlight team was really able to pick these tools up and start making these pages. And we found ourselves, you know, ahead of time, ahead of budget. And Adam had a really exciting idea to sort of rethink how people donate, and this notion of pledging a donation to a specific hospital. You know, maybe it's a hospital near you or one that you have a personal connection with. And we were able to, with Contentful, Gatsby, and some help from Netlify Forms and Zapier, we were able to really quickly put up this sort of initial pass on this, and Algolia as well. So the hospitals are pushing Algolia. We're using their places, geospatial search. You can pick a particular hospital. It'll show you how many different needs they have. You can fully sponsor them. And you can also search for a specific hospital by name if you wanted to, find the hospital that way, and make a sponsorship as well. This page really, to me, like, is one of the clearest examples as to why I think working in this technology is great. And that early line about targeting the budget is, I mean, this would have been unimaginable to just kind of sneak in down the stretch, but because of all the stuff we didn't have to kind of redo, reinvent, and just how flexible it is to leverage these different microservices and APIs, we're able to put together that in a pretty short period of time. So hopefully that was really helpful to actually see what some of that looked like. I know it's something I've been curious about, the specifics of how you build with that. Let's spend a quick second and talk about the results. The site's only been up about a month for Starlight, but there's already been some pretty exciting things. Lisa can talk to what it's meant for their team, but I think that GIF sort of sums up their reactions.
Thanks, Brian. This has been a really amazing experience. These tools have really blown our minds with what they can do and meeting our expectations, exceeding our expectations. But the Starlight team can definitely now, with this new site, focus on storytelling and putting our customer journeys first and building engagement for our mission. And the tech is so intuitive, and it doesn't require any programming knowledge. Not only is our UX designer in there every day with Contentful and Gatsby, but the rest of my team is too. Any of us can jump in and make changes and updates with confidence. But additionally, we have seen, since we've launched the new site, major user growth from about 6,000 people a month to 20,000 a month. We've seen a 37% increase in our average monthly page views, 45% increase in average session, and most importantly, I think, a 33% decrease in our bounce rate. And we're now able to A/B test and make real-time updates and have deeper insights into our donors. We're able to track their activity all the way through to our CRM and our advertising platform. So all in all, our storytelling took a major leap forward, and it's now incredibly easy to showcase the kids and the families we serve, as well as our impact and programs in our hospitals.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, I didn't even get into the A/B testing. That was another thing we kind of got to put in down the stretch and integrate all that for you to get insights on those CTA blocks. So yeah, just for us, again, just quick recap. It was the original site, did a migration from WordPress into Contentful and connected that to Gatsby Preview to give the editorial workflow we just looked at. And then, Gatsby and Netlify are handling the builds and the deployments. And yeah, we launched on time and on budget, because we've got some cool new things in there. We hit every week over week milestone, and yeah, that sponsor hospital page has really been a great thing that we were able to pull off, and we really resonated with being able to give to a local hospital, and it was cool to be able to get that done for them. So I know there's a lot of info. I appreciate everyone that hung in here till the end. I'm happy to dive into any questions. I know Gatsby is also here. Sam is here. If anyone has questions about Gatsby's roadmap, we've got Contentful here as well. If there's any questions about their platform, and myself, Jordan, and Starlight are all here too. So feel free.
Great. Thanks, Brian and Lisa and Adam. Really appreciate that. And we've had quite a few questions come in. Just a quick reminder to keep putting in your questions, because we have time to get to them. And just before we get to the questions, I'm going to launch one more poll. So you should see this come up now, but we're curious to know, what is your biggest frustration with your website? And of course, I can only list like 4 or 5 options here, so it doesn't cover everything that might be a frustration. So if your top answer isn't listed here, feel free to put it in the chat window. So a couple options here is that it's not optimized for mobile. It might be difficult to update content. You might have slow page load times, or not optimized for search engines. So go ahead and put your answer in there. And then once I close the poll and share the results, we'll get to your questions. And we're almost at 75% voted. So just one more minute. Okay, great. I'm going to close the poll and share the results. Okay, so difficult to update content. That resonates with me, being on a marketing team. Slow page load times is next. And then it looks like not optimized for search engines and not mobile optimized coming in after that. Okay, thanks for participating in that poll. So now let's get to the questions. Quite a few have come in. I'm just going to start at the top. A lot of these are about specifically the Starlight project. So one question is around authentication. What have you used for user authentication and authorization? Probably a question for Brian.
Yeah, so their donations are actually handled by a third-party service, Classy, because it integrates really well with Salesforce. We have a couple touch points with Salesforce as well on the site through the sponsor hospital form. Looking at a sort of more tightly integrated donation solution is something that's on the horizon, but for the actual donor management and stuff, that's all handled by Classy.
Okay, great. And the next question is, did you have to meet any web accessibility requirements for this project?
Yeah, it wasn't a huge cited part of the scope, but we certainly do focus on that when we are sitting there working on our Lighthouse scores, and try to give some pretty strong consideration to color contrast and font size and legibility and things like that, and just maybe a little more aware of that on this project than other ones.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how you implemented A/B testing with Contentful?
Yeah, for sure. So it's less of a, I know there is some direct inside of Contentful integrations. I think there's some really exciting stuff with Optimizely that's part of their enterprise space that I know the Contentful folks are here, and they might be the best ones to elaborate on that. Our implementation right now, because Starlight's requirements didn't really push them into needing that enterprise space quite yet. So we leaned a lot on Google Optimize, and that's integrated through the Gatsby site and sort of connected to the CTA blocks. So they can kind of know which donate CTAs are performing. They can swap the dollar amounts on there, the donor pitches on them, and see which ones elicit more clicks and things like that.
Okay, great. One question came up about the presentation being shared. We will have a recording of this webinar that will be available on our website later today. Brian, not sure if you want to share your specific slides, but if so, you can let me know and we'll make sure that's available as well.
Yeah, happy to do that. And any other questions, our information's up here on the slide. Happy to help move us all forward here. And yeah, I don't know if Contentful did want to touch on the Optimizely piece, but I know there are some pretty cool A/B testing, like integrations within Contentful around that.
Yeah, hi, I'm Amelia. I'm from Contentful. I'm answering some of your questions in the chat, and I'm happy to answer some more. So a little bit about Contentful and Optimizely. Contentful and Optimizely work together to facilitate experimentation without the need of a developer. So you can actually have your development team help set you up, and then editors can run all of the experiments on content using the Contentful web app. So you actually don't need to go back and forth between both of the web apps. And I'm happy to answer more questions. We have a couple of great articles that are out there. And if you're already using Contentful, ask how you can set that up to test it out for your team as well.
Great, thank you. A couple questions just more on the website build. You may or may not want to answer these, but I'll just throw it out there if you want to. And I'll bucket some of these together. They're around, curious how long the build time is for this site, or what the budget was for a project similar to this, or how easy or hard was it to migrate from WordPress to Contentful?
Got it. I'll answer 1, and 3, I'll skip the budget one.
Okay.
The first one, as far as build times, yeah, we're seeing them most of the times under a minute, 40, 50 seconds, sometimes depending on if it's like a full cache clear deploy. You can see, a little north of a minute, but nothing has broken outside of a minute yet. And the other one, I'm sorry, that was, remind me, Linda?
Sure. Migrating from WordPress to Contentful.
Yes, thank you. That wasn't too bad within the extent that we could do it. Like some content, if it was really WYSIWYG heavy, obviously taking a WYSIWYG kind of mass body field approach and getting that into the blocks was a little less practical. So there was some manual work there, but all the stuff that had sort of a clear migration path using Contentful's management package and that API, pretty easy to write some scripts to get that in. And all of the hospitals, for instance, also on the sponsor hospital page, I think there's about 900 of those hospitals. Those were all done with a single batch import script, and yeah, it really wasn't too bad.
Great. Yeah, we still have several questions we're going to get to, but just real quickly wanted to mention Brian had of course talked about Gatsby Preview and mentioned Gatsby Cloud. So if you're interested to get started with Gatsby, or you're already using Gatsby and you want to get access to Preview and some upcoming features that will be coming soon, you can sign up for Gatsby Cloud at this website, gatsbyjs.com/cloud. So that's a great place to get started. Coming back to the questions then, let's see. One was similar to the last questions. Someone is curious about how long does it take to launch a project like this?
Jordan, do you happen to have handy our timeline there? I want to say it was.
I can look it up, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was maybe start to finish was about 2 to 3 months. I think was about right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's pretty close. And that was from. Okay. There's we did like a 1 to 2 week sort of discovery phase up front, and then I think from the moment we actually got to work from design to build to launch was just about 2 to 3 months.
15 weeks, not counting discovery.
There you go.
Okay, great, thank you. And this one is probably for Sam. Oh, I think he just grabbed it. A question about Gatsby Cloud, and Sam, I don't know if you want to answer that one for the whole audience as well.
So the question was whether Gatsby Cloud will be available with sources other than GitHub. And yes, we have GitLab as well as Bitbucket on the roadmap. So we'll be working on that over the next couple of months.
Great, thank you. Another question about multilingual content with Gatsby, and I guess, what's the best way to do that? If the Gatsby team, Sam, if we have any recommendations on how to build in multilingual content with Gatsby and Contentful.
So in general, multilingual content is a question that a lot of folks ask. I'd just say generally, how you handle multilingual content depends a lot on the CMS that you're using, because different CMSs have different levels of support. Contentful in specific has a built-in internationalization module. So often what we find folks using Gatsby with Contentful is that they're sort of fairly easily able to store the different internationalized versions of relevant content, and then in Contentful, which makes it easier to handle. In terms of, we have the answer, the full answer of how you do internationalization in general is a long one. We do have some resources on our documentation pages, whether you're using Contentful or a different CMS. That should be fairly applicable to your use case.
Great, thanks, Sam. The next one, probably for Brian again, is okay, so for internal design team that drives module design, what does it look like in terms of flexibility of design changes? So how do you handle building out the design for modules?
I love this question. Thank you. It's one of the greatest things about this, I think, is, so let's say within a particular project's budget, we say, okay, and we can get about, 10, 15 sort of modules and blocks, and we put those together. And then, there's budget, it's the next quarter for another investment, and it's okay, well, we do 10 more. You're not having to like really rethink the whole template. You're able to add tools to the toolkit and to continue to build it out. So it's also really nice to be just thinking and embracing the same kind of mindset that we have in React, like thinking in components in design. We really love working in Figma, which even uses the same name component. It's really great. We almost think of these pieces as like their own individual, index cards, and it's really great to just tunnel vision on that and think of this as its own isolated piece. Obviously, I'm trivializing one part of it, which is how all these pieces need to be able to fit together down a page and feel cohesive and feel aligned. And that's an area where Jordan and Mike, who's also one of our main designers, he's here as well, where they really work their magic and make these things look and feel great and combine to form a page. But all in all, revising them, editing them, new ones, we find it's much more flexible and much faster than dealing with like top to bottom page templates.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then any content modeling gotchas you'd call out in moving from Drupal to Contentful?
I love this question too. Yeah, it's definitely different. I mean, I would say the first time we started working with Contentful, early last year, I think that was probably the most, I wouldn't even say growing pains. It was just kind of like rewiring, our way of thinking. And in Drupal, there's all these sort of extensions and add-ons to, what used to be CCK. That's now like, the core, just content modeling kit. So if you kind of bump into I don't have that field type, you're kind of off and searching for something that could do it, which, was kind of an upside and a downside, because you end up installing all these, weird modules to solve a content modeling issue. Contentful, there's a very opinionated set of fields, and you have what you have to work with. And what you realize over time is, you start thinking outside the box a little bit, and you're like, oh, okay, actually, everything I need is here. I think the best example of that is probably the navigation, like doing a navigation in Contentful. Drupal has a specific navigation type. In Contentful, that doesn't exist. Everything's content model, and that's just what it's called. So it's up to you to realize, hey, well, what's really the difference between a navigation and another content type? So there's the content type called navigation, and then we've got navigation dropdown as another content type, and navigation item is a third one. So that really is a great example, I think, the nav of just kind of how to rewire thinking a little bit. But it was really empowering and freeing once we actually did. And yeah, so those are the primary sort of gotchas, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And then along those lines, were there any, or what are the pros and cons you see between Drupal and Contentful, or what instigated a move from one to the other?
Sure. I mean, I still have love for Drupal. I don't want this to sound like this is a, total like we don't like Drupal anymore. For decoupling, I mean, there's been some huge strides made in Drupal 8, and there's some pretty great. I think it's Media Current or maybe Third and Grove. I know some really awesome agencies that do some pretty impressive stuff with decoupled Drupal and Gatsby. I just liked how easy it was to get set up, the preview API keys, the 4 different APIs of Contentful. It just felt a little more usable out of the box. I really loved clients' reactions when they would just see the UX. I like that it's a supported product. Those are some really big wins for us, but we would by no means shy away from a headless Drupal or even a headless WordPress. Sometimes there's a lot of internal reasons within organizations. Their whole team knows Drupal, they're already built in Drupal, and they don't want to replatform. And that's the great thing about Gatsby is it's not like locked into Contentful or anything else. Drupal and Gatsby play just as well together.
Mm-hmm. Great, yeah. And okay. So one question someone has, or Josh Evanson wanted to know, is Delicious Simplicity hiring?
Yes, definitely.
There you go. You might have recruited somebody.
Yes. Especially if you're in the LA-ish, California-ish area, and we can get together face-to-face once in a while. That's a huge plus.
Okay, great. Oh, we have a couple minutes left, so I'll present a few more questions. Oh, this one maybe for Jordan, the developer that was speaking on the Starlight tech setup. Somebody wants to know your Twitter handle so they can follow you.
What's my Twitter, Jordan? I only recently got a Twitter.
Webster?
Yeah, I only recently got a Twitter because Linda and Kyle and Sam and Jason were all ribbing me pretty good at Gatsby days for not having one.
You are DS Brian Webster.
I am DS Brian Webster. And I'll be more active there, but it's the past couple of years has been pretty busy learning Gatsby and all these new tools, so I haven't had as much time for Twitter, but I'm gonna do a better job of that.
You have 2 tweets.
Yes, I have 2 tweets.
Okay, well,
about Gatsby.
now you have a couple more followers, so some motivation to tweet more.
All right.
Okay, let's do maybe 2 more questions. What types of bugs did you run into with having flexible content models or giving content authors flexibility?
I think that question is what sort of issues we run into when the client was maybe using these tools and having that much kind of freedom of a layout. I think that's what he's asking, so I'll try to answer the question as I understand it that way.
Sure, that was from Marco. So Marco, if you want to clarify that a little bit more, but go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually great. It's when we conceive of these ideas, as a team, and we all huddle up, and yeah, there'll be this block and that block, and the metaphor we've sort of used internally is it's kind of like putting the inflatable things down the gutter of a bowling alley. Like we're straitjacketing and we're building these content models, so it's kind of impossible to throw a gutter ball. But yeah, that doesn't mean that you can't still roll a 1. It's not a guarantee that you just throw stuff in a content block, put it down the page, and it's going to look sensational. So not too much with Starlight, but certainly, yeah, there still is some kind of stewarding and training, I think, that goes into handing a system like this off to a client. And what we've actually found is that it actually simplifies things for the client if they kind of shift their thinking from necessarily needing like an in-house like coder and web person, and more of a someone who can write great copy, someone who can like cull together or produce great assets or illustrations. And that's actually an easier, more high value hire. And if you're putting great photography, if you're putting great assets into these content blocks and you're writing short, concise, snappy copy, then it really is tough to not have a good bowl there. It will look really good. And that's part of the sort of handoff and the training that we do is, how to kind of think in this space and, embrace less is more, quality over quantity. But yeah, that first time we ever rolled out this, that was okay, all right. So it's still possible to put things in here and have it not look great. So how do we curtail that? Contentful also has some great validation features on the content type. You can put some character limits on fields, things that don't look good. If there's a really long sentence, you can kind of, keep putting those creative limitations around the content model in a way that makes it look pretty good.
Okay, great. All right, well, we are out of time, so I just want to say a big thank you again to Brian and Jordan and Lisa and Adam, and to our panelists for joining to answer questions, and for everyone joining today. So just a reminder, you can find the webinar recording on our website, gatsbyjs.com, a little bit later today. And also, if you're interested in trying out Gatsby Cloud, you could also go to that website /cloud and get started there. So thanks, everyone, and have a good day.